Greetings and salutations. This is the Adjutant, and today I want to talk to you about something that honestly does not get discussed enough. Why some veterans never recover financially after the military. Now, before we even begin, I need to make something very clear. This is not one of those videos where I sit here and judge veterans who are struggling. This is not what this conversation is about. Because after everything I've seen, after over 2 decades around veterans, working with veterans, serving veterans, I can tell you something honestly. A lot of financial struggle after military service has very little to do with intelligence and a whole lot to do with transition. Because some veterans leave the military prepared professionally, but emotionally unprepared for what civilian life actually feels like. And nobody really ever talks about that part. Nobody talks about what happens when the structure disappears. Nobody talks about what happens when the mission disappears. Nobody talks about what happens when your identity changes overnight. And today, I want us to have a very honest conversation about it, because I truly believe this topic affects far more veterans than people realize. Now, one of the biggest mistakes civilians make is assuming that the military experience automatically translates into long-term financial success. It does not. Now, does military service create discipline? Absolutely. Does it create resilience? Of course it does. Does it teach leadership? Without question. But military service alone does not teach emotional transition. It does not automatically teach financial planning. It does not automatically teach investing. It does not automatically prepare somebody for isolation, for divorce, for identity loss, for depression, or trying to rebuild an entirely new life after years of structure. And what's more, many veterans quietly begin struggling. You see, the military provides structure for almost every part of your life. Now let's think about this for a moment. All right? There's structure around your paycheck, your housing, your health care, your schedule, your responsibilities, your promotions, your expectations, your retirement system. Everything has structure. You know where to be, you know where to answer, who you're going to answer to, you know what your mission is, and then one day that structure disappears. Now suddenly, nobody is checking on you anymore at all. Nobody is telling you what your next mission is. Nobody is giving you direction. Nobody is laying out the roadmap. And for some veterans, that loss of structure becomes emotionally destabilizing. Now, here's the part that most people miss. All right? Financial collapse usually does not begin with money first. It begins emotionally first. That's truth. A veteran starts drifting emotionally before they start drifting financially. And once emotional exhaustion seeks in, financial discipline often starts collapsing right behind it. Now, maybe they stop planning, maybe they stop investing, maybe they stop budgeting, maybe they stop believing long-term matters anymore. Maybe they start spending emotionally. Maybe they begin surviving instead of building. And there is a massive difference between surviving and building. Now, one of the hardest transitions for many veterans is loss of identity, especially high-performing veterans, especially leaders, especially people whose entire adult lives became tied to service. Because in the military, you know exactly who you were. You had rank, you had responsibility, you had purpose, people depended upon you, people respected you, and then suddenly you're a civilian again. And for some veterans, that adjustment hits much harder than they expected, because now they're trying to figure out, who am I without the uniform? Now, a lot of veterans never say this out loud, but some of them miss being needed. Not the stress, not the deployments, not the nonsense, but the sense of purpose, the structure, the brotherhood or sisterhood, the mission. And when that disappears, some people quietly lose motivation. And when motivation disappears, financial consistency often disappears with it. Now, let's talk honestly about another issue, divorce. Divorce has financially devastated many veterans. Not all, but many. And military life itself often creates tremendous pressure on relationships, deployments, long absences, emotional suppression, constant movement, stress, years of compartmentalization, then eventually the marriage collapse. And now somebody who once looked financially stable is suddenly striving to survive. Why? Well, you have child support, alimony, a divided retirement, legal costs, emotional depression, housing instability, and while pretending they're okay externally, and this happens far more often than people realize, another issue people rarely discuss is trauma. Trauma affects financial behavior. Absolutely it does, because unresolved trauma changes motivation, emotional regulation, decision-making, long-term planning, self-worth. Now, some veterans emotionally stop planning for the future because deep down, they stop believing in the future emotionally a long time ago. That's real, and people don't like talking about it. Now, let's say something else. We want to talk about this carefully. VA disability compensation helps veterans tremendously. It absolutely does. But compensation alone does not automatically create financial stability. Because financial stability, folks, let's talk about that, requires discipline, planning, emotional regulation, health routine, structure, long-term thinking, and unfortunately, some veterans receive financial compensation while still emotionally drowning underneath. Another major issue is pride. A lot of veterans do not ask for help. They do not want counseling. They don't want therapy. They don't want mentorship. They don't want financial guidance because military culture often teaches people to suppress struggle. Handle it yourself. Push through it. Figure it out. Because unresolved problems grow in silence. And silence, folks, becomes expensive. Very expensive. Now, despite all of this, I do want to say something hopeful. Many veterans absolutely do recover financially. Many rebuild extraordinary lives after service. But the veterans who successfully rebuild usually understand something important. They understand that civilian life requires a completely different strategy, a completely different mindset, a completely different structure. The veterans who recover financially usually create routines intentionally, continue learning, they seek mentorship, build new missions, maintain discipline, process emotional wounds, but honestly, stay connected to community, they avoid isolation, they avoid lifestyle inflation, continue growing after service, and perhaps most importantly, they learn how to build a second identity after the military. Now, that part matters tremendously. Now, if you're watching this today and maybe you're struggling financially right now, I want to say something directly to you. Your story is not over. You are not broken beyond repair, and you are not the only veteran rebuilding quietly. Now, a lot of veterans are rebuilding right now, emotionally, financially, mentally, spiritually, physically. Some are rebuilding all of it simultaneously. And rebuilding takes time, especially if you spent years surviving instead of healing. But recovery, folks, is possible. Peace is possible. Structure is possible. Purpose is possible. And financial recovery is absolutely possible too. One decision at a time, one routine at a time, one disciplined step at a time. And honestly, that may be the most important thing I say in this entire video. Some veterans never recover financially because nobody ever help them recover emotionally first. And so there you have it. One of the most honest conversations I probably had on this channel, because financial struggle among veterans is often much deeper than money. Sometimes it's grief, sometimes it's trauma, sometimes it's identity loss, sometimes it's loneliness, sometimes it's emotional exhaustion nobody ever addressed. But regardless of where somebody starts, rebuilding is still possible. And so there you have it. I hope this has been helpful. This is the Adjutant, and I'll see you in the next one. I wish you all blessings and blessings. Shalom.